On today's show, is it fair to say after last year and the year before and the year before that, frankly, is it fair to say that Fernando Tatis Jr. is no longer a superstar?
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network in the business for Wednesday, January 14th. As always, I am your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been covering this team for not just 6 years, but soon to be 7, and also not just for this podcast, various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, chief among them. You can follow some of my work there. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by FanDuel. The wildcard round, it's here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode, so visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. And in fact, we're not even in the, it's not wild card round anymore, it's division round. Silly me. But go check out FanDuel, guys. Today's episode, I want to talk a little bit about Tatis, do an episode dedicated to the boy, and talk about whether or not he is still a superstar and all those sort of things, because let me tell you, get a lot of comments, and we're going to talk about them today, because I think that there's a bunch of things with this. I really do. I think that with Tatis, let's just jump right into it. I think that let's first talk about the superstar question, right? I think that there are some people who like to sometimes distinguish star and superstar. If you're one of those people, I actually think it's decently fair to say, is he a superstar anymore? Again, it sounds like semantics, but hey, it's sports, guys. What are we? Us sports fans, we love semantics and titles. And is this guy just really good or is he elite? You know what I mean? We do this stuff all the time. So if you subscribe to that belief that superstar is different than star and all those sort of things, I think it's at least possible to say that. Because if you look at the past few years, Fernando Tatis Jr. has not done superstar things, right? On top of just having a little bit of a dud in this last year's postseason, in general, he hasn't had more than 25 home runs since 2021. Long time, right? Like, it's been a decent amount of time since that's happened. He's also been a guy that doesn't hit for the same slug that he used to, right? His first year in the league, 590. Second year, 571. His third year in 2021, when he was third in MVP voting, he had a 611 slugging percentage. Then what happens is you have the PED suspension, right? And then ever since the PED suspension, since he's got off it, he has had slugging percentages of 449, 492, and 446. Nothing to sneeze at, certainly, but certainly something that actually has to be discussed when it comes to what looked like an MVP potential player for this team. And I think that is actually, it's totally reasonable to say that now, right? His first year, coming off of the suspension and shoulder injury, by the way, which needs to be brought up in this, he slashed 257 with a 322 on base and a 449 slugging. That's not very good. 111 WRC plus. The big thing for him that year in 23 was that he was absolutely phenomenal out in right field and got himself a platinum glove. Like, that was the big thing that happened that year. Then in 2024, things were a little bit better. He had a 135 WRC plus, he had a 340 on base, and a 492 slugging. He had 21 home runs. In 102 games, though, he did get hurt. But a lot of that started coming late, and we still didn't see that MVP form, right? He was a little bit consistent. He was a solid batter. And then right as soon as it looked like things were turning around, he gets hurt. So we say, okay, but he looked like he was turning things around. And then you saw what happened in the postseason in 2024, right? Do you guys remember that? You remember how ridiculous Tatis was in the postseason that year? Because I remember he was so good, in fact, that he had the highest OPS in the history of baseball in the postseason. Now, granted, that's because of a small sample size, right? But even still, he was phenomenal with a 1,500 OPS, almost near single-handedly taking the Padres to the NLCS, frankly, right? Like, that was absolutely insane stuff. And he was great there. So you combine that with the injuries and blah, 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 some of the time that he missed, and you say, okay, this is the year when he gets back to that superstar level. And let me tell you, in certain ways he was, but in terms of that batting that people are talking about, he was not. He finished the year slashing 268, with a 368 on base and a 446 slug. His slugging went backwards than what it did in 2024. He was unable to hit for as many extra bases as we'd grown accustomed to. The on-base percentage was great. He had a 12.9% walk rate, the highest of his career, but that stuff didn't really translate into power. And that's the type of stuff that people look for from your superstar MVP quality players, despite the fact that he finished with a 131 WRC plus, right? Just didn't have the numbers that you essentially associate with that. But let's talk about one of the comments that we got from a listener. And this was a little bit old, I will give you that. But At Mr. Listen to Me Please, Tatis is always marketed as a superstar. Why? My perspective as a 41-year local Padre fan and former local college baseball player, which, come on, man. But whatever, you can flex, I guess, whatever you want. I'd rate Tatis as, unless you're being facetious, you're being funny. I'd rate Tatis as barely a mid-level superstar at best, not an elite superstar. Again, don't you love semantics, guys? That's what we're doing on today's episode. Tatis is only elite in his right field defense. Tatis's offense, batting average, power numbers, OPS, etc., has consistently reduced, not improved, over the past 4 years. Tatis seems to be suffering from the communicable mental virus called a, in quotes, guaranteed contract. Manny Machado also suffers from this. It renders a player almost unable to run to first base on any ground ball they hit that they initially perceive will be an out. Let me interrupt you on the Manny Machado thing. I will not defend Manny Machado this fervently when it comes to some of the questions about how he is as a leader, because we have had some reports and some literal quotes from him that suggest he isn't necessarily like gonna, supercharge people to go out and play necessarily, even though that might not be his job, which is also fair. And his past incidents and behavior when it comes to like some of the dirty player allegations and image that he's cultivated. I won't necessarily fiercely defend him on that. I will when it comes to the ground ball stuff. Very few players have played more games than Manny Machado. He hits the ball super hard. I don't mind. And I'm not going to bring up all the time if he doesn't leg out all these plays, because you know what? Y'all want to praise that? Guess how Tatis has gotten hurt, right? Playing super, super hard all the time. At least just this minute, in my opinion. Anyway, he goes on to say, Tatis's $340 million guaranteed contract, worth on average $48K in at bat, is a staggering amount to pay a guy who half the time looks disinterested in even batting this past 2025 season. Coach Quintera agrees with this observation. I definitely trade Tatis now if the no trade clause is waived and the return is reasonable. I don't know who that is that you're referring to, but no, I would not trade Tatis. And these are the type of things of why I wanted to talk about this, right? Because I think that with Tatis, there's this perception by a lot of people that because he's not hitting 40 home runs, that he's not a great player anymore, and therefore he should be traded. Let me tell you, even with the contract, you would get a lot for Tatis now, which in fairness, I get with the whole team being sold, with the farm system being depleted, with the finances and not having more money to sign longer deals for players, right? I understand that. But the idea that they now need to trade him because he's been bad is just patently false. At worst, Fernando Tatis Jr. has been a 3-win player, which was last year when he missed something like 650 games, right? Then he was a 4-win player in 2023, and he was a 6.1 win player in 2025. That was top 10 in baseball. Now you might be saying, Javi, who cares about wins above replacement, right? That's ridiculous. That's too advanced. You're such a nerd. Well, do you care about the names that he's associated with, right? The only players that had a higher wins above replacement mark than Tatis last year are Francisco Lindor, Jose Ramirez, Corbin Carroll, Trey Turner, Geraldo Perdomo, which is the only weird one on this. He had such an amazing year. Shohei Ohtani, Bobby Witt Jr., Cal Raleigh, and Aaron Judge. That sounds like a crop of players. And this is what I would tell everybody. If you see an advanced stat, right? For people who maybe aren't familiar with all the advanced stats out there, as much as people who cover the game and are weird like myself. If you see an advanced stat and the leaders are all players that we all kind of collectively, as a culture, agree are superstar, really great players, it probably means that the stat is pretty useful, right? Average exit velocity. I will never forget Mad Dog Russo trashing the stat, and on the side of the screen, the leaders in average exit velocity were Judge, Shohei, Pete Alonso, maybe, Juan Soto, like literally all players we agree are amazing players. So clearly the stat has some value. So that's what I would say in regards to that. And I think the idea of trading Tatis is absolutely preposterous. But I want to continue talking about why exactly Tatis is still a superstar, or could potentially still be a superstar, and also why, frankly, it's still fair why people don't call him a superstar to begin with. But first, let me take a second, guys, to talk to you about the divisional round, guys. It's here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. It's great. And you just see a bunch of different boosts that you can apply to whatever sort of build that you're crafting in that crazy old brain of yours, right? It lets you lean into your instincts, momentum, defense, whatever you want. You can go in. The boosts give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet on something new. Every play feels bigger, and it makes your bets feel that way too. So go check it out, guys. Visit FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL game day. Remember, that's FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are back here at the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing as always, talking about the superstardom of Fernando Tatis Jr. Is he still a superstar? Well, it is complicated because, again, like I said, it does depend on how you view these things. And I really do think that a lot of the naysayers, unfortunately, have a good point. Me personally, I'm a Chargers fan. I defend Justin Herbert. I think he's great. I really do. I don't think everything is his fault. But after the playoff loss with how they played, I can't immediately dismiss those criticisms, right? Unless you're saying like someone like Tua is better. Like, for any football fans out there, don't be that dumb. Like, have a brain, read one book, read one article, talk to anyone who knows football. Don't be that far. But in terms of all the other stuff, it's totally fair, unfortunately. Can they turn it around? I do believe that. Can Tatis turn it around? I totally believe that. And I think that there's a couple really important things to mention about superstardom as well. Firstly, sometimes superstardom isn't just how you play on the field, it's also how you are. A big reason for Tatis's popularity is on top of how he plays and the numbers, right? It's the fact that he's really good for highlight videos. Remember his rookie year when he scored on a sac fly for, was it second base? Remember that madness? Remember when he flipped the bat and he became on the cover of MLB The Show? People love exciting players. This is not the bygone era when a Derek Jeter type of personality could become a superstar. That's another reason why Tatis is so popular. He's still top level in jersey sales. In fact, I'm not sure top selling MLB jerseys. I'm not sure where he is these days, but there's a reason why he was featured in their Era Cap commercial, all that sort of stuff, right? I still think, yeah, he was number 10, actually, behind only Harper, Devers, Soto, Lindor, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Aaron Judge, and Shohei Ohtani. Again, he's still a top level player in that regard. He just hasn't has quite as many moments as of late, right? And again, like I said, and like I compared with the Chargers thing, he has deserved a little bit of slack to be like, well, you did have a PED suspension, and conspicuously, all of a sudden you don't hit for as much power as you used to, even though you've shown some signs of it. And that's what I want to talk about next is the signs, the in-depth sort of stuff about Tatis. Well, let me tell you, Fernando Tatis Jr., if you pull up Baseball Savant, all of his stuff is great. His weighted on base is 370 expected, right? He's got an expected batting average of 272. And then for the really juicy numbers, his expected slugging is 480. His average exit velocity is 93.3 miles per hour, which ranks in the 95th percentile of all major league players. His hard hit rate data, 93rd percentile. But he was unable to carry the ball. And it was very weird because if you look at Tatis last year, he was absolutely doing that, right? His barrel rate was, which by the way, combines not just how hard you hit the ball, but also how high in the air launch angle wise it went, which is what we call a barrel in baseball. For those who don't know, last year his barrel rate was 92nd percentile. It was 14.5%. This year, just 10.9%. Certainly nothing to laugh at, but it's weird. Why was he not launching the ball? Well, there's a couple reasons. Number one, he struggled mightily against off-speed and breaking pitches. He hit only 140 against off-speed pitches this year. Compare that to last year, he hit 261. It's weird, right? Why in the world were you so much worse? Even in a down year against off-speed pitches in 2023, again, a season when he was just coming back, he hit 220 against them. So what the heck happened this year? And then also against breaking pitches, he hit 213, which he hit 274 against last year. Right. And I think that there's a bunch of different reasons for this. Number one, it could be, which I have theorized a lot on this show, that he's just doing a little bit too much and he has to figure out his swing mechanics. And also Luis Arraez being ahead of him, right? Or I should say being behind him in the lineup. I don't believe it's a coincidence that Fernando Tatis Jr.'s walk rate, which was the highest of his career, it doubled with runners in scoring position this year. That tells me that teams were like, you know what? Arraez, best case scenario, he's going 2 for 4 with 2 singles. We can live with that. That's fine. And he's not going to be productive with his pitches. Right now, he did have some productive outs this past year, but when it came to milking the pitcher and swinging at the right sort of stuff, he didn't do that. Go check out my guy, Big League Analysis on TikTok. My guy Peyton, he did a great video for Tatis Jr. that I might link in the description of the show. That really broke this down very well. Did a video on Luis Arraez that I thought was excellent. Very much go check that out. But I think that it made it so pitchers were like, okay, we don't have to pitch to Tatis, just throw him nothing but garbage. And Tatis was forcing the issue, right? How many times did we see him swing at pitches that were really low and he just grounded out? He hit the ball really hard, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't able to sort of maximize his potential with those pitches. And it's really weird because that's not something he's faced before. This past year, he had a 50% ground ball rate. The year before that, 46. Year before that, 47. Right? Not great numbers, but certainly not as bad as this year, right? He just wasn't pulling the ball as much either. He had a pulled air ball rate of 12%, which was the lowest of his career, right? So he just was unable to pull the ball. And I think at least partially evidenced by the walk rate and evidenced by the fact that he couldn't hit specifically off-speed breaking stuff. I think the pitchers were like, oh, Tatis is next, and there's a man on second. Let's just, because Arraez is right behind him, let's just throw him garbage. And at worst, he walks, right? That, I think, is a decent reason for what had happened. The next thing is what I talked about with my fellow Padres super fan and CBS correspondent, Jake Arriani. He brought up that he thinks, from what he's heard as well, that it might have been some personal life stuff, that maybe it was just maybe a little bit of stuff off the field, and he just wasn't totally right. And there's a bunch of different reasons that could happen that we don't know about. So I think that all this combines to say, I think Tatis is still an electric player. And I still think that he is a fringe Hall of Fame player if he were to continue on this pace. A 6-win season, guys, that's very hard to pull off. And if he is just basically, for lack of a better comp off the top of my head, Andrew Jones, a guy who was a pretty good offensive player and then one of the best defenders in the National League for years, or maybe American League, that's a Hall of Fame type of player and a player that is well worth the money, even if he is not the Ken Griffey Jr. that we were hoping he would be, right? But I did get another comment from Esther, listen to me, please. He's not performing as a top 10 player in baseball. You know what I mean? Would look like 40 home runs, 100 plus RBI, 30 stolen bases, defense, clutch of the playoffs. His stat average the past 3 years is 23.6 home runs, 66 RBIs, 266 batting average, 24 stolen bases, an A defense, mediocre in the playoffs. The A defense is the only stat where I see Tatis is living up to top 10 in baseball performance level. Again, as a Padres fan, he says, but again, those are the traditional stats. And if you look at stuff like WRC plus, he still had a 135. That's very good. It's very, very good. Very, very good. And that is the type of thing that can absolutely be a big time player for your team. But I will say, with the Padres constraints, with the worries of Manny Machado's aging, with the worries of aging and everything else around Xander Bogaerts, Tatis really kind of needs to be not just a 6-win player because he's a great all-around player. He's got to be a guy that can really carry an offense. And there are times when he does it. There are. We saw it last year at the beginning. It looked like he was fully friggin' back. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? In the month to start the season, this past season, right? What happened to start the year? He batted, what was it, 345. That's how he started March and April. He hit 345 with a 409 on base and a 602 slugging, 182 WRC plus, came crashing back down to earth with a 74 in May. Then 110, then 156, then 116, then 151, right? He finished the year really, really strong. But overall, it is true that I have not seen this beast, the Ken Griffey that we thought we were getting from Tatis. Does he still have it? I like to believe so. But if we're on like year 3 of saying, hey, his expected numbers have to come in at some point, it's year 3. 1 year, it's excusable. It happens, right? Another year, all right. Well, you know what? In fairness, Tatis got hurt. Okay, so it's okay. It's okay. But year 3, and we know that you've been suspended for PEDs once, it's hard not to make assumptions and make declarations about that. But I will defend the fact that he is still a star in this league. He is still a star. He might not be Bryce Harper, but guess what? Bryce Harper, not nearly as valuable as Fernando Tatis Jr. because of the defense and the speed, right? So I think that we should look at this as, remember that he is still young, and it's not like this has never happened before in baseball, that a guy started off great, had a couple years, and then had some great ones after that, right? Success is not linear, especially in baseball. A sport where we have seen guys like Evan Longoria start their career looking like a Hall of Famer and barely be 2-win players for the rest of their career. It's happened before, and it can happen again with Tatis. Just keep that in mind. But I will say, the allegations of him no longer being a superstar, they're not entirely without merit. And with all that being said, guys, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, thriving and vibing as always. You caught me sipping my water if you're a YouTube watcher. And let me tell you, why aren't you a YouTube watcher? Go check out the show on YouTube. Leave your comments in the comment section below. I will be sure to answer them on Friday. Today was originally going to be a little bit about whether or not the Padres have to rebuild. Going to save that potentially for the future. But let's answer some of your questions and comments. Actually, I forgot one thing. Last thing I want to say about Fernando Tatis Jr. God, I am so bad at this sometimes. Forgive me, everyone. But there was a proposal on Friars on Base, which is a fan-sided website, part of the fan-sided network, I should say. And I want to just bring up that I've written for them a couple times, so I don't want to bash them. But remember that fan-sided, unfortunately, as a whole, sometimes can be a little bit clickbaity. But that being said, there was a trade offer with the Tigers that said send the Tigers Fernando Tatis Jr. for outfielder Wenzel Perez. My apologies, I don't know how to say this name, but the number 6 prospect for the Detroit Tigers at second base, How Yu Lee. And then first baseman, Josie Briseño, I believe is how you say his name, number 3 prospect, and starting pitcher, Jaden Hand, their number 10 prospect. Yeah, this is about as bad of a trade proposal as you will see. And everyone, please stop freaking out to the extent where you think that they need to trade him just to trade him. This is still a very good player, and I think that there is no intent by the Padres to trade him. I will say that Briseño sounds like a pretty decent player. He is the 33rd ranked prospect for the Detroit Tigers, but all those other ones are not. I'm sorry, not for the Detroit Tigers, on the top 100 in Major League Baseball. I've heard some decent stuff about him, first baseman and catcher. I would like that, right? Maybe he's someone that you could trade. Maybe you could trade Nick Pivetta for that stuff, right? That actually makes a lot more sense. I like that, actually. Yeah, that same trade offer, but do Nick Pivetta and maybe Adrian Borjon, something like that, or Marinaccio, something like that for those prospects. Not terrible. Not terrible. I actually kind of like that one. I do. Anyway, that's besides the point. I just want to say that if the Padres are going to trade Tatis, definitively, check in next year. Check in next year and check in specifically if the team is bad. They are not going to trade the face of their franchise just because they're a little bit cash strapped, especially when they're coming off of 2 90-win seasons. It's just not happening. And stop letting the ESPN radio, national media people who their entire thing is just wanting every star to go to the same big market. Don't let that fool you, right? There is still a lot of potential here, and they could still keep winning 90 games. This is a team that has been misdiagnosed quite literally like almost every year that I've been covering them. Almost every year. Right? So give them some time. Don't worry. People almost want the Padres to fail sometimes, at least in my opinion. But let's continue chatting, guys. At Silas Robert Shaw 8122 says, I am just going to enjoy watching us be relevant consistently. We have never been that. Made it to the World Series twice, but never this level of consistent winning. Go Dads. That is such a healthy way to view it, Mr. Silas. And I always appreciate you leaving comments on the channel. And remember, everybody, you can leave comments on the channel too. Going to answer some of them on Friday as well. It's Monday Mailbag is what I like saying. But for all my listeners, if you made it this far, in the offseason, I'm ready to just answer questions on every pod, especially because it's just very rare that you get any news. But go ahead and do that. Next one comes from at Rama Murdy 9938, a very common commenter. So a consistent listener. Shout out to you, my friend. He said, what is up with the late uploads? Who said you could go on vacation? Just kidding with you, dude. That being said, I have been a little bit late with the upload, so I apologize for that. I'm doing a little bit better now that I am off the holiday break and settled in my currently undisclosed location in Virginia. And I'll be attempting to have the episode out. Definitely not nearly as late. So again, my apologies for that. That is on me. To make it up for you, though, go subscribe to YouTube. There are some shorts that are going to be coming out. Just some extra content for you guys. He says, I would love to get Zach Gallen or Nick Martinez. We should also pursue JT Realmuto. He thinks Rhys Hoskins is cooked and Arraez just doesn't work for what we need, which is a power bat or two. And Mark Robles 470 says, I agree, but I would like Bassett over Gallen. So let me just talk about this really quickly. I think JT Realmuto, I like him. I think it's a misallocation of resources. I think it would be a 2-year, $27 million, $26 million deal. I don't think I want to spend that much on a catcher. I'd rather just say, for me, lock it down. Hopefully you could get something out of Campusano or sign a catcher that's going to cost infinitely less if you are really feeling bad about the catching situation, platoon, whatever you want to call it, and you're saying, you know what, I don't want Freddie Fermin being the main catcher. I want to have a little bit more of a platoon, have a little bit more of a timeshare, hopefully a timeshare that is better than the old Francisco Mejia, Austin Hedges days. But basically what I'm saying is do another Diaz, Elias Diaz type of signing, right? Just a decent player. Instead of signing JT Realmuto, I would just rather allocate that money elsewhere. And I'd rather allocate that towards a back-end starter or a power bat like a Rhys Hoskins, like a Nathaniel Lowe, who we talked about yesterday. Go check out that episode. But that's just me. And I disagree that Rhys Hoskins is cooked. No, that's not entirely true. I don't totally disagree that Rhys Hoskins is cooked. I just think that there's a world in which he hits 26 home runs again. And that's already more than every single player on the team except for Manny Machado had last year. Right. And I do think that there is a world in which they get a lot of power back. Right. I actually mentioned this in one of the YouTube shorts that was out. I talked about how little power they have. And someone left a response saying from at Brandon Lindquist 3389 says, I think Sheets is going to hit 20 home runs next year. That's great. It's not amazing, right? But I think that Sheets could not only hit 20 home runs, but I actually think that he could slug a little bit. I really do. I do think that that's going to happen. So if you combine that, right, Sheets, who this past year had moment, like he was a little bit streaky and he finished his slugging percentage of 429. But I do think if you give him some more consistent playing time, his strikeout rate wasn't horrible and he did walk a decent amount. I could see a world in which he's a pretty solid power contributor for this team. If Manny Machado still holds up and hits 27 home runs again, maybe even 30 if he could get there again and stays healthy. If Tatis reverts to superstardom, and if you have Jackson Merrill, who I think could be a 25 home run guy, that could also work. And then you have whoever they get at DH and all that. I do think that could help. I do think there's potential for a turnaround there, but you still need more, man. You cannot be third to last and expect to go far. Right? Like, or expect to be consistently competitive as an offense if you're going to be that low in Major League Baseball. And especially with this level of a payroll, you got to do better than that, which is why I am down for taking a shot on a Rhys Hoskins, because I just don't think it's going to cost too much. Right? That's what I think. I could be wrong, though. I could be wrong. But moving on, though, to one last comment that I want to get into, which is from my guy. And by my guy, I mean someone I don't think has commented on this channel before. At Chuck Jones-12M says, Salas doesn't have, referring to Ethan Salas, Salas doesn't have anywhere near the value he once had. He doesn't hit at all, and his best skill was his elite pitch framing. But with ABS coming now, pitch framing is no longer a value. Being a good pitch framer could actually hurt your team more than it helps now. Weird. Because it could cause your pitcher to burn all the team's challenges on pitches he thought were strikes because of how well they were framed. He's the Padres version of Diego Cartaya, and he likely won't be on any list again. This is an incredibly pessimistic viewpoint. You know what I mean? I might actually need to save this full question for Friday's episode, but in my opinion, no, ABS is not going to make the pitch framing completely irrelevant, nor is it going to make blocking balls from getting behind the plate irrelevant and throwing out runners or just being a guy that players don't want to run on, right? I do think that he can work with pitchers. I have heard way too many good stories. I think that framing and all that is still great. I think the Diego Cartaya comp is just not the same, right? And I actually know some people like my buddy Aram Layton who talked about Ethan Salas a couple weeks ago. Go check that episode if you haven't already. I think that I trust Aram, and he was like, I think that this guy could be Gabriel Moreno. And I think that a big problem for Salas is that he was overranked to start because he has such a high floor with his defense, with how he is apparently just as a figure, right? Like this guy carries himself in a way that's like, this is an alpha player. You know what I mean? And I think that with abs, I don't think that that's going to be true. Are there going to be some moments where it derives? Hold on. I can't think of the word. It detracts. There we go. It detracts from his value, sure, but it's not like you have unlimited challenges are going to be able to call every single play and pitch. That's not what's going to happen necessarily, right? So we'll have to see how that works. I understand a little bit of the pessimism about Ethan Salas, but I do think that he still has some value for this team. But if they were to trade him, I'm just hoping that Preller puts together some really, really good stuff. Because remember, this is a team that has some of the worst metrics among all teams since 2019 when it comes to catching, right? You do not want to be in that space as a team dying for catching. And I don't think it can be underestimated that with his defense, that alone, when he gets called up, probably makes him better than most catchers that the Padres have had these past few years. That's what I think. but I could be wrong. And let me know if you think I'm wrong or what you think I'm right about or what you think I should talk about next on the next episode of Locked On Padres, guys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the business. But until those next times, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.